Now I'd like to introduce our second speaker. Our second speaker is Dr. Lundqvist. He is the director of the Chalmers School of Entrepreneurship at Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg in Sweden. Mats is actually the director and a co-founder of the Chalmers School of Entrepreneurship. And what the school aims to develop is entrepreneurs and new ventures through arranging partnerships with students and idea providers from Chalmers University and beyond. As a result of his work, and I suppose that of his colleagues, more than 50 technology ventures have been started since 1997. In 2009, the Swedish government undertook an international peer review, and as a result of that, the School of Entrepreneurship at Chalmers was placed at the top of its ranking. So we have a true champion here with us today. Mats himself is involved in research, teaching and collaborative development work in the areas of university entrepreneurship. He also serves on several boards dealing with incubation and technology transfer. So thank you very much for coming, Mats, and we'll give you a round of applause.
I got a title called Creating Technology Ventures to Combining Entrepreneurship Education and University Technology Transfer. And yes, I know this is an enterprise education workshop, so let me first say thank you to you, Julia, because outside UK we don't have that word, enterprise, so we tend to say entrepreneurship education. I will touch upon this distinction in the end of the presentation, because more and more I think you will also start using the entrepreneurship word. In Europe we do, but it's basically because we don't have this nice word called enterprising. I'll explain that a bit in the end, but I would like to give you the first two stories to position the model that we've championed. First, I need to bring you into a world of technology transfer, of innovation, of research and stuff, because that really matters. The key, which also you mentioned, for innovation to actually become something is entrepreneurship. Innovation policy researchers and others, innovation policy hasn't recognized that until lately. Now it's all over the place, and that was one of your main points. Entrepreneurship, enterprising is really the tool to bring new knowledge into use and into society. And we are spending a lot of money on research and development, and we don't necessarily see it all coming to use. Entrepreneurship is key, and the model we've championed will be an example of how extreme this can be done. That will give you a sense also of what the actual education, when you have 2 years of intense entrepreneurial training, the way we've championed it, what that means. Because we can translate from that into more, how should I put it, simpler, less costly kinds of enterprising educational programs. That's at least what we hear all the time nowadays. People come to us because they want to see how we do it in the extreme, but translate it into their setting. So please apologize for me going into these two examples, tech transfer and entrepreneurship education, but I will bring it together in the end because I think it can, and I hope it will, inspire the lovely work that I hear you do, particularly here at this university, but also in the UK when it comes to institutionalizing enterprise education or entrepreneurship education, as I call it then, broadly in the institution. This is a cutting-edge approach, championed since '97, and we're just about to institutionalize it broadly at Chalmers. I'm going to learn from you guys here. By the way, Chalmers was not a Scotsman, but his parents were. William Chalmers, our founder, and he worked with the East India Company in Gothenburg, getting rich, being in Canton, trading with Chinese, the porcelain and stuff, and then founding Chalmers 1829. So, we have a lot to thank Scotland for. This is one of them. It's actually challenging for many people to see that these two spheres should be connected. It could say innovation, it could say research and development to the left, and then you have the students to the right. The intersection between these two spheres at most universities are really not that big. I've been in that little intersection since '97, and that's my whole life, to champion the connectivity here. And I'll try to explain why this is relevant far beyond the premises of a technical university. I noticed Juliet used the more politically correct word knowledge exchange, which I probably should have done as well. But since I am at the university and we are doing this from inventions that are technology based, I use the American word, which is like tech transfer. A lot of words here are used differently in the US, in the UK, and in Sweden and in Europe. So I'll try to bring that into the equation as well, giving this more international dimension to it. There's a study looking into this gap between the things that I've been living in for 16 years. And there are only 2 out of 85 scientific articles in entrepreneurship education mentioning tech transfer. And there's only 6 of 242 on tech transfer issues that mention education. So there are only basically 5 out of my colleagues or our colleagues that are, publishing both in entrepreneurship education aspects and tech transfer. So this potential that we are about to realize, which I think will be critical for Europe and for the world, is really not seen by my fellow scholars a lot. And it's a bit of a championing issue just to get this on the research and thereby also the policy agenda. I think we're about to have big breakthroughs. So that was the setting of my whole world. Now I'll go more into explaining why this tech transfer or innovation world is so important for me. In the end, this is why I do what I do. I try to prevent the Ericssons and the Volvos in Gothenburg to end up where Nokia, the Finnish company, ended up a few years ago. It just went badly, right? Because of the smartphone and everything. It was the ecosystem of large corporations, universities, and startup companies on the US West Coast that broke Nokia. That's the former CEO and now the chairman of Nokia saying this, and that's what I call entrepreneurial learning. Pretty costly, but still. And as you know, we don't have mobile phones. Ericsson don't do them anymore. It's only Sony that does it, so we've also lost that game. And remember, Finland and Sweden were the leaders of this. To some extent Motorola, but really Finland and Sweden, this is only 10, 15 years ago. We really thrived through this mobile phone becoming what it was then. Now it's all about smartphones and it's Silicon Valley driven. When we compare ourselves with the ecosystem in the West, we need to be careful. And I dare to push that there are basically 2 very different settings. And I would argue that here in Glasgow, in Scotland, in the UK, you're more to the right than to the left. So in the US, you have disruptive startups nurtured within an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Okay, it's been there since the 30s, partly because of the guys, Packard and Hewlett, starting this with the help of Dean Turman, sponsoring them a little bit in the late 30s, starting HP. And then the rest is history, and you have then, the Page and Brin and the Google, etc. So they built this, but it's been there since, the 40s, 50s. What they have there now is what I would call an invisible hand ecosystem. The graduates there have connections, they make connections, they can easily become entrepreneurs because they just reach out and connect to the venture capital and to the whole ecosystem. Most other regions do not have anything similar yet. So we have instead Gothenburg, we have mostly large firms, which is kind of troublesome because they get a lot of the policy money still. That's good for UK. Because you don't have that many, so more money actually goes to new companies. For us, they still go to Volvo. Anyhow, they do primarily incremental innovation, right? So that's a problem if you want to stay agile. Graduates in most universities in Sweden, Scandinavia, and beyond, they avoid the valley of death. Okay, you can almost hear the valley of death. Doesn't sound too fun. And inventor entrepreneurs, especially those coming from the academic side, they don't make it over the valley. They're not entrepreneurially dedicated enough to do it. There are very few exceptions. The rule is that incubators with people being inventor entrepreneurs, professors leaving university, starting a company, they normally do not make it the way that these guys did in the US. Okay? So we need other models. We need a visible hand approach. And an education is a visible hand. That's a very tangible thing. Through an education set up in a good way, you can attract people, you can make them become something they've never become without the education. So that is a visible hand approach. This is, however, the ecosystem picture that our region now let an artist draw probably 10 years ago, saying how we are populating basically the Valley of Death. And you have the industry on the left side and the School of Entrepreneurship in the academy here, and then you have incubators, science parks, etc. It's getting almost a bit old, but it's important to remind ourselves that the access of these resources, the accessibility of these resources for our students here or at Chalmers are critical if we really want to go the enterprising educational journey. We cannot just have the education. We need to also supplement it with this, populated Valley of Death that we actually have built in Sweden basically since 95 and onwards. Nothing of this was there pre-95. So we're talking almost 20 years, but it's a short period of time. Colleagues from the US, they hypothesize that this Valley of Death is perhaps not just one valley, it's actually, as you can see, three. And we in Gothenburg have a strong history to work with this venture creation, the packaging of occasional inventions coming from everywhere into a venture and then getting it started, etc., reaching hopefully some kind of a proof of concept, etc. We are now very much trying to do this. We realize, and this is really tough to say, that the Valley of Death is actually longer than anyone ever wanted to be. I mean, the venture capitalists, they hate it being this long, so they're gone. They play no substantial role in Europe anymore, I'm sorry. Forget about the VCs. These innovations that we're talking about are having to have a much longer journey than we even wanted to think. And we have to believe, we have to believe as that we're halfway through, as Bon Jovi says, right? And that's what they have in America. They have this belief. We need to believe that as well. And I'll show you, because we've been around for 16 years, that this actually works. The Valley of Death is long, but you can transcend it with smart and clever ways. You don't have to do it the US way, which is a lot of money, test for a year, or kill. We can grow these companies, these ventures, much more lean, and we're doing that. Our way of looking at how the university has evolved, and this is a paper we just got published, is that our model at Chalmers, and it's increasingly happening around in Europe as well, is that it's a matter of not just having support units, which are really important. Yes, we have university support provided to, for instance, researchers or to educations centrally. I believe this is one. You also need to integrate entrepreneurship within the research groups, within the departments. And having a yes and yes, which is not that common, but getting there is really the method. You need to work with the people, the faculty that are in their disciplines, doing education, but you also need the support structure. I believe that UK has been, at least for me, a role model here for long, and I hope that you can persevere being the leaders you've been into combining these models, not just the centralized TGO, technology transfer, and not just hoping that there will be academic entrepreneurs out there, but actually the combination. So let's go into the school a bit more closely. This picture is from '97, and it says in a nutshell why we started. We wanted to position students in the Valley of Death, right here. Develop an entrepreneurial competence capable of communicating and interacting with research as well as with business. And this picture is the only one still around 16 years later, and I think it's very intuitive, and I think I'll now show you a little bit what the results have been. Here's one example, Minesto, an invention coming actually from our Saab fighter jet division in Linköping, which is not Gothenburg, a spin-off from industry. And you can almost see why it's not relevant for fighter jets, is because it's technology which is underwater, right? So you have turbines here, a 12-meter wingspan thing, and it's like a kite going against tidal water. And by the way, guess where they are located? Yes, Ireland and UK nowadays. So thank you for helping them with money, but also offering a better environment with tidal water than we have around the west coast of Sweden. This company would not have been if they hadn't found us and we had brought Anders and Lotta, our students, and connected to this idea. The inventor at Saab was super happy because he can now see his idea be realized, still working at Saab, but being part of this, if you like, joint venture that we set up with Saab. And this has got 4 rounds of money It's actually money from some sheikh. So it's oil money being transformed into clean tech ventures, and could be one day, 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, 10% of all electric energy consumption, and it's, as you can understand, totally green, not bothering anyone because it's underwater as well. So Anders and Lotta would not have become tech entrepreneurs because I know their educational background. They were not from technology. They would have never been connected to this. So it's a company that shouldn't exist and two entrepreneurs that should not exist. And this is really run now as a typical high-tech startup. Pretty cool, huh? I think. That's why I'm still around, I guess. So, to give you then a bit of behind the scene, what this means to run this kind of operation where we actually are trusted with stuff from even industry. Well, we have input channels from 3 sources: companies, universities, and vendors, and we check out approximately 150 ideas per year. They end up being run during the master program in parallel in approximately 12 projects, and after the education is done, we normally end up incorporating 5 or 6. So it's a huge funnel behind this, and this is what costs a lot of money just to uphold this. This is the tech transfer part, and of course I recommend you to have it because it works, but just so you understand that this is kind of the cutting edge thing. And you can also see the type of companies are typically tech ventures: ICT, medtech, clean tech, material, sensor, bio, pharmaceuticals. ICT is being still the biggest, but nowadays it's clean tech, which is fun and great, and you saw an example of that just a few seconds ago. This is what they're called, and you can see it's 54 incorporated. It's 80% survival to date, so that's from the start and until today. And we looked at the numbers just a year ago, or I did actually, and you look at the revenue numbers. Our companies amount to 27 of Sweden's incubated tech venture revenue, and that's pretty much. And remember, these are 25-year-olds, okay? Previously not proven entrepreneurs attending our program, and they stand for more than a fourth of the tech venture revenue generated by 21 leading Swedish incubators, okay? I'll leave you with the arithmetic, but it's not supposed to happen. One of the things I heard in the beginning when we were young was, Mats, it's all great, but you can't have 25-year-olds becoming, tech entrepreneurs. Okay, so I had to work 10 more years, but now the proof is in the pudding, you say here, don't you? Yeah, I love that. So one of the cooler companies, I tend to show the cooler ones, of course, is this one, and here we have Andreas. You have Nandan, our inventor from Chalmers, revolutionizing a way of band weaving carbon fiber, which has not been industrial, but this company's made it industrial, the machine that actually can band weave. And it's done for Formula 1 cars, for hockey sticks, and all kinds of stuff. Took 7 years before they had cash flow, or even more, depending upon the invention, if you count that. They took 4 years before he came to us, so it's basically 11 years. Now it's a gazelle, very fast growing, and it was the super gazelle of the year in 2010. And this is our financial minister. You might have seen him. He's got a little horse thing in his hair in the behind. So he's becoming a bit cocky, we think, because he's got such a nice economy running. But we like him on board here. So this is real. This is the valley of death. It takes a lot of time, especially if it's not the ICT, the information and communication technology ventures. They can go a bit faster. The moment you go into like this, materials technology, it takes time. Trust me, you have to have persistence. You have to believe in the policies we put out there. And this is way too detailed to go in detail in, but this is just one case, a vaccine case. They take a lot of time too, but they're pretty important once you get them out there, right? You can see how many types of grants, verification grants. This is where they went into the school with us. Then they also get money for that. Then you have public soft loan, and you have a lot of small grants. I mean, dollars are $25,000. It's not a lot of money, but it means a lot for these very early stage ventures. And we can do it lean and mean in the European way, and that's very important that these structures are built up Now, that was the tech transfer side, the embeddedness that we are in now, but we've been part of creating also throughout the years. Because without that reality, without the ecosystem being there, talking about the stuff I now will be less meaningful. Now, to position the educational approach, this is a nice slide from Norwegian colleagues. So you have type of involvement of students, passive or being active, or even being owners. That would be more extreme. You can have the type of business, being individual, being low potential, being high potential. And all this is relevant in different degrees, but this is really where we are then, according to this four-fielder. So we're coupling students, so they become student surrogate entrepreneurs. Do you understand what I'm saying? Student surrogate, which is the odd thing about our education. I'm not recommending everyone to do this, but the fact that it works means that technologies that do not have the driving force actually can get a driving force. Why should we do this? Why should we use a surrogate approach? Why should we put our students, as we say, in the driver's seat? Okay, and there's a reason for that being cited here. But I will, because of time constraints, go into my study that I've done and just give an indication of the 170 technology ventures that I mentioned before. I looked at them and sorted them. Which ones were surrogate ventures, where the incubator had helped recruit an entrepreneur, and which were not. And I looked at performance. And I got a very strong significance for surrogate ventures. So we need to engage into surrogates and entrepreneurial team formation was basically what I could say in this study. And of course, adding a whole master program and an action-based education, of course, helps as well, because that's what we've done. So you have like 2.5 times higher turnover and 5 times higher growth in the 59 surrogate ventures compared to 111. This is the total population of tech ventures in Sweden, started in this period by these leading incubators. So, to be out soon, hopefully, as an article. To give you a bit more about this surrogate thing, I know there are people in the room who've dealt with this, okay? There are a lot of research, especially from the UK, saying that this is not easy always. There's a problem with surrogates sometimes being too much market, and they don't resonate with the ID providers being too much tech or geeks or whatever you call them, right? So bringing someone in who's a high-profile person so often can create frictions. It's a delicate team-building thing. Now, we, by having a stronger or longer nascent phase, including a lot of team formation and education, and we are probably taking away some of the risks that exist with surrogates. And we can also allow, since the founding phase is longer, our students actually become much more part of showing the direction of the venture. They become actually innovators as well. They're not just taking someone else's technology to the market. They translate it, they transform it, and that's very important, not just for the venture, but also for the entrepreneurial learning that our students get. So there's a point actually in having young people being learners rather than having senior persons being very positioned in being serial entrepreneurs. And by the way, the serial entrepreneurs, they wouldn't choose these early bets anyhow. They go for the more easy to pick bets. So we really are operating here without much competition, if you like. Now, slowly, this will then build an ecosystem. But as you can see by the cartoon, of course, you cannot have traditional teaching if you want all this to happen among the students that we bring in. There's a very famous person here, many of you know, Gibb, Professor Gibb, and he's inspired a lot of people, also us in the UK, in Sweden, sorry. He is from UK. He's one of the key persons talking about enterprising approach as compared to the conventional approach. Now, two colleagues of mine, Susanne and Karen, they got this published, and they are going into distinguishing a bit further what it means to have a venture creation approach, which is really what we have, learning through venture creation. So you can see it's similar, but it's taking it a bit more to the extreme and to the reality. So if you have like here teacher as fellow learner. Here you have multiple learning stimulators. Okay, I'm not important, of course I am, but my job is to make sure that the learning environment is good, not to be the teacher. You understand? It's really having the confidence to step back. Okay, and this is not popular among a lot of scholars. What do you mean? I'm not important? No, not really. Great message, huh? But in the end, they of course have their role, the traditional scholars, but someone needs to make sure that the actual system of connecting to the ecosystem and having coaches and alumni coaches and people from brought in, etc., is working, and a lot of the work for me has been to do that. I will not go through everything. This will be posted, and you can check out that. I will give you some flavor of our most recent research, some insights from our educational lab, because we look at this really as a laboratory. Income students and ideas, and outcomes entrepreneurs and ventures. Whoa, it's kind of cool, I think. So, key words here. One is what we call transformative learning. I've already used that a bit, that word. So we are looking at the psychological transformation, the convictional transformation, the behavior transformation going on in this program. And it's pretty dense, it's pretty huge. And it does happen, but you have to set it up, and there has to be a lot of different incentives and aspects to the culture to have young, high-performing, we're talking good students here, the good grade, high grade, elite kind of environment that could go directly to industry. We're not talking necessity entrepreneurship here. We're talking opportunity entrepreneurship. So those who come to us, they voluntarily want to have this transformation in order to make a difference, to become something other than a corporate, if I may use that word. And that something other means going voluntarily into the valley of death. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? So you need to work on these attitude changes to have people wanting to go there and seeing the point of that. Now, it's a roller coaster. It's a lot about emotionality. There is now finally research looking into the emotional aspects of entrepreneurial or enterprise education. That has so much to do with it. Scholars are not trained in emotionality. We're trained in cognition, to think and analyze. So we're not necessarily good at this, but this is what it's about. Okay? Do you understand? The broadening of the scope that we as teachers need to deal with. Yeah. So we can see that we have major impact through this 2 years of roller coasting, as we say. And I'm happy to share more about this to those who are interested, but I'll move on now. Just a year ago, we finally managed to bring together sisters and brothers from around the world. Just to give you a sense of what Juliette already had indicated, our research tells us that most of these extreme programs are in the Nordics, in the UK, and of course in the US. And you mentioned Louvain, which is also on our list. So they're very good as well. So there are probably a few more, but it's not that many, and there's huge opportunity to take if you want to have this more cutting-edge program, together with the broad-based thing, which we'll hear more about in a few minutes. I think that works fine together. So this is what we found. Not many do it. The natural question, which you will raise later, and I'll answer then, is how come there are not more if it's so great? But I won't answer that now, because you will ask that later. And if you don't, I won't answer. Anyhow, a few reflections about how it works. It's very team-based. This is all about collaboration and team. Team. Word value creating is very important to use. I'll get back to that in a second. Why? There's a lot of reflection. So it's not only action, it's a lot of reflectivity. Our students talk a lot, they reflect a lot. They need to, because in the end they want to make the best out of this innovation that they're dealing with. So it's, remember, it's technology ventures. They don't just want to go and run. They want to figure out really where to make a difference. We have a lot of HR, human resource mechanisms, individual and development talks, stuff. We talk a lot about the role set and how to make that function, and that's a key concept, the role set. The network, of course. And we want them to become knowledge searchers. They're very much looking for opportunities. They always, if they get stuck with the current business model, they always need to have one or two things up their sleeves so they can go in another direction. That's how they survive. So just to give you a sense about how it works. Now, I think it's like 3 slides more. This is to give you a sense of what the students end up doing. Okay? I would say it's all about the entrepreneurial learning competence and ecosystem, and that starts to bring me back to the enterprise education setting that this is about. So only, if I may, 38% are startup entrepreneurs and managers. The rest are really being entrepreneurial of our alumni in other settings, in established firms, employees, business consultants, etc. So we are. I'm super happy with these numbers, to be honest. Had it been only 10%, I would have been sad. Had it been 80%, well, then our students would not have been seen as valuable around in other places, in industry, etc. But they are. And it's easy for them to get a job. And industry people say, your students are great, they are plug and play. They immediately start to create value and they're good. So there's no disconnect between independent entrepreneurship and embedded enterprising, as you would say here. It's really the same thing, but with different nuances. We've become a third mission, the Innovation Mission Hub. We look upon ourselves as developing the ecosystem. We are very much into broadening the idea of universities, not just learning about entrepreneurship, but also learning for, and especially learning through. And that's where the more transformational aspects are. A question I ask is, how long a program do you need to actually really affect people's being, what they want to be and how they look upon themselves? 2 years works, but is half a year enough? I don't know. Perhaps there are some answers out there. One of the things we want to know more about. The definition that we found just 2 years ago, which is similar to what Julia had, we found in Denmark. And I take this because it helps bridge for the day here, okay? Entrepreneurship, and I added enterprising then, is when you act upon opportunities and ideas and transform them into value for others, okay? Then second sentence is critical. The value that is created can be financial, cultural, or social, okay? The last sentence, of course, opens up this for everyone, because it does not only have to be the financial type of entrepreneurship. Now, the first one, I think, captures a lot of the things we've been talking about. It's about acting. It's absolutely about opportunities and ideas. But it's also about the transformation. And the key word, if I were to choose any key word, is the value creation. I would say that value creation, others appreciating what you do, is the fundamental new aspect to enterprising, or I would then say entrepreneurship education. And I'm happy to dwell on that if you like. So, conclusions, okay? Put entrepreneurship in the driver's seat. We need to bring in the students into our innovation, tech transfer, research and development oriented settings, because there are not enough of entrepreneurs there to do the job that we want them to be done. This can be done by integrating entrepreneurship education and the tech transfer and all the innovation policy instruments that you have. And I would argue that it's a very strong effect that you get through that integration, and it's not done a lot, so go for it. Enable what we in Sweden call entrepreneurial learning, but you call enterprise education, and competence development everywhere, absolutely. And I'm happy that we'll learn more just in a few minutes about that. Think about yourself as building the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I know it takes a lot of time, but after 5 or 10 years, you will see huge effects from the fact that you have this integrated education going on, I would say. And there's a huge potential. Go for it. Thank you very much.
I'll ask one quick question.